time again, if we're not allowing ourselves to eat when we are hungry, or we're eating more than we're physically hungry for, we are using food to cope. And if we do that on a daily basis, then we clearly have some underlying stressors that we're not managing well.
Do you work with people who just or simply can't lose weight? They're not anorexic, they're not bulimic, they don't binge and purge, they're not obsessive necessarily, they just can't lose weight, and they've checked it out physically. Their thyroid works, their body works, it's not in their DNA.
So if that's the case, and I will tell you, Fanny, that that's rare. That person you just described
is a
rare person, because usually what's actually happening, even if they're not aware of it, is they are eating more than they're physically hungry for. If they're maintaining a higher than natural weight for them, all things being equal in terms of metabolism and other health concerns, there is more calories coming in than the body needs. It's that simple, which means that somewhere in there, they're not tuning into those natural signals of fullness. So that's when we would come offer them some guidance around mindful eating and just being more present in their body as they're eating, but also take a look at what might be going on underneath there, what might be going on in their life that's triggering them to feel a little bit stressed and therefore needing to disconnect from the present moment.
And some people who simply can't figure it out have surgery.
Yes, and unfortunately,
a bypass type of surgery.
Yeah, we see a lot of those people at the center who come to us after they've had the surgery, because in reality, if you have a higher than natural weight for your body, chances are you are using food to cope. If that's the case, surgery is going to help you to create some degree of restriction, because of course you just can't take in the same amount of food that you used to.
Or you'd be sick. Your stomach is smaller, and there's the band around it. I think it's the stomach.
That's right. So what we often see is that people who were, say, compulsive overeaters have the lap band surgery or something like that, and then they become bulimic because they haven't solved the problem that triggered them to need to overeat to soothe and numb and distance from the present moment, and now they can't do that thing they were doing to help soothe themselves, so they try and keep trying.
So the cravings are still there, the desire to eat is still there.
The underlying need is still there. For all of us, it's about really questioning whether we're safe in the world, whether we can trust others or ourselves, and that questioning makes us feel anxious. And our reaction to that anxiety, if we don't know what else to do, is to find ways to numb to it. That's why so many people turn to drugs or alcohol, gambling, sex addictions, and food. In the case of orthorexia, people are taking this concept of healthy or natural or even local eating to an extreme. And they're doing it because their focus isn't so much on wanting to be healthy as it is on wanting to have a more socially sanctioned form of restriction. In general population, something that you'd look for would be somebody who is so concerned with eating healthily that even when they're really hungry, but there isn't any of their socially, or they're more comfortably sanctioned foods around, they won't eat. And if we just stop and ask ourselves the why question, why am I having this drink right now, and why am I about to eat this treat? And if the answer comes back because I'm nervous, or because I'm uncomfortable, or because I don't want to be here, or because this person stresses me out, then go ahead and have the drink and have the treat, but just be mindful of that. And just the mindfulness of why we're having it will help us to slow down and to not feel so guilty and shameful afterwards. Did you know that dairy contains opiates? And even more in the digestive process? So that when we're eating dairy, when we actually ingest it, and then later as our body is digesting it, we get this lovely release of these pleasure chemicals that trigger the dopamine release in the body and make us feel happy and make us feel good. So naturally, it's a tough one to kick if there are other aspects of our lives that aren't feeling so good, and we don't know how to fix those. We're naturally going to be drawn to certain of these foods to trigger that release nice and quick. What happens with the sugar is that we get these millions of molecules that rush the bloodstream, triggering that intense opiate reaction, but then also there's an insulin response. And as I just mentioned with meat, what happens with the high insulin spike in the body is an even greater dopamine release. So that's why we're so drawn to the processed carbohydrates and sugars. I mean, they taste good. So there's a natural pleasure trigger because they taste good. But there's also a chemical reaction happening in the body that's making us truly feel a drive for them. Because you're actually going to say, okay, drill sergeant, not a fan of how you're speaking to me there. Yeah. Makes it really hard for me to get the ultimate message, which is you want me to be safe. In fact, the way you're speaking to me there makes me feel unsafe in myself, which makes me check out and puts me in a vulnerable situation when I'm around other people. That if I could just be present with myself, because it was safe, because I was speaking to myself nicely.
If I don't zone out before that, because I excel at zoning out.
Well, we have to zone out. If we've told ourselves the world is an unsafe place, and that bad things are going to happen, and it's because me, it's just not safe to be present. That coping strategy of dissociation is a very important friend. It's very beneficial if we're in a situation, well, if we're in a situation where our needs aren't being met, it's triggering us to feel very overwhelmed and anxious. We've got to find a way to check out quickly. So we disconnect from our emotions, we leave the room, we binge, we purge, we restrict, we drink, we do drugs, we get all caught up in relationships and what other people should be doing and all these things that take us out of ourselves, right?
Is that whenever we restrict ourselves, we're going to overeat when we next get around food. I'm sure you've experienced it as students because your schedule's so wonky, right? And it's really hard to maintain that healthy, balanced schedule. And of course you're running in and out and here and there, and of course there will be times when you're extra hungry. And naturally what's going to happen is when you next sit down around food, you're going to overeat. So don't make the mistake of assuming that means you lack willpower, or that that's what's always going to happen. Maybe just ask yourself, okay, but wait, when did I last eat before that? I must have been ravenous. So as long as I eat regularly throughout the day, I'm not likely to do that.